What's up everybody, how's it going? In this video, I want to tell you the truth about being your own boss. As a lot of you know, it's been 8 months now since I quit my full-time job as a software engineer at Facebook to pursue my company AlgoExpert full-time. By the way, if you're preparing for your coding interviews or your systems design interviews, check out my company AlgoExpert. Go to algoexpert.io and use the promo code CLEM, C-L-E-M, for a discount on the platform. And also, I had been working on my company for almost 3 years when I quit my full-time job. So the point is, I have a pretty good sense of what it's like to be your own boss. And I wanted to share with you the pros and cons of being your own boss, because while it does sound like it has a lot of pros and a lot of positive things, let me tell you, it does definitely also have some cons. So I'm going to focus this video on the two main ramifications or things that come with being your own boss. The first one is the freedom of responsibility that comes with being your own boss, and the second one is the freedom of decision making that comes with being your own boss. So we're going to start by diving into the freedom of responsibility and specifically the pros of that. So taking a quick step back, when you're working for an employer, you have a responsibility to that employer. They are employing you to basically perform. And what that usually means is you show up at work during the work week, you put in your hours, typically 40 hours a week, you deliver results, and therefore you perform. That's the responsibility that you have to your employer. And this is usually painted in a negative light because there's this connotation that you're effectively bound to your employer. You have to abide by their schedule, you have to do what they want you to do, and even though obviously you're getting paid to do that, there is this feeling of you are chained. You have a responsibility to someone else or to something else. Well, when you're your own boss, naturally, as you might expect, you suddenly are free of that responsibility. Suddenly, you are not reporting to anybody else. You don't have to perform for anybody. You don't have to show up to work for anybody. As an example, for me, I can work when I want, where I want. I also have the luxury of working on a product and in a field that lends itself very well to remote work. So all I need is my laptop and an internet connection, and I can really work from anywhere in the world if I wanted to. But so the point is, I do not have any responsibility towards anybody. Now, of course, one might argue that I have a responsibility to my customers or to the rest of my team or even to myself, but all of those things, we're going to assume that they're true, but these are not quite the same things as having a responsibility to an employer. And so going back to me specifically, what this translates into is that I can work whenever I want, I can wake up whenever I want. If I ever want to take a break from work, I can. As an example, today at one point in the afternoon, I was in the middle of some work and then I decided that I wanted to go on a bike ride. I was able to do that. No one was watching over me. Yesterday night, I was in the middle of work at like midnight, and suddenly I decided that I wanted to watch a movie with my girlfriend. I was able to do that, and that's an awesome feeling. The best way that I could describe this as is, imagine you were on a permanent vacation, except it's not really a vacation because you still have to do some work, or at least you should do some work because it's your company, your business, but you are on a permanent vacation because if you want to, you don't have to work. And you don't have to ask anybody for permission not to work. And even at companies like Google and Facebook that are awesome, that give you a lot of flexibility and freedom, even at those companies, at the end of the day, you have to show up to work, you have to report to your managers, and you have to perform for your employer. Okay, so we get it. That's one of the pros of being your own boss. The second one is that freedom of decision-making thing that I mentioned earlier. One of the common complaints that you hear from people who work for an employer is that they effectively are building the vision of the employer. They have somebody else making the big decisions and telling them what to do, and they just have to execute. Now, of course, depending on your role at a company, you might have a little bit more decision-making responsibility, but even so, unless you are at the far end of the decision-making hierarchy at the top of the chain, you are not the one making the big decisions. And that can be frustrating sometimes because you might disagree with the decisions being made. You might think that the people making the decisions are idiots who shouldn't be making the decisions. So it can be quite frustrating. Well, when you're your own boss, you suddenly don't have that because now you're the one making those decisions. Any decision in the company, you're making. As an example for me on AlgoExpert, any product decision, I'm making. Of course, with the help of my team, but still, at the end of the day, I'm making it. Any financial decision, I'm making. Any marketing decision, I'm making. So it gives me a tremendous sense of power and of ownership, and power not in a weird maniacal way, more in a very empowering way. I guess that's a tautology there, but you get the idea. It's this awesome feeling of being the captain of your own ship. So at this point now you might be wondering, okay, well, what are the negatives in all of this? It sounds like everything's positive, everything's awesome. No, there are some negatives. So if we look at the freedom of responsibility first, the negative thing about that is that by having no responsibility to anybody else, you start to very quickly lack structure and accountability. In other words, when you do work a normal job and you have an employer, you have structure in that you have your work week, you have the time when you come into work, the time when you leave work, you have all of that kind of set up for you. When you are at work, you are going to be working, you're not going to be slacking, or at least not too much. Sure, some companies like Google and Facebook are very flexible and you can kind of fuck around at work if you want to, but overall, you are at work and you have this structured work environment. And as far as accountability goes, you are going to be held accountable by your manager, by your peers, because you have to deliver, right? Otherwise, you're going to be fired. Well, when you're your own boss, you suddenly no longer have that structure or that accountability unless you impose it on yourself. And what I'm getting at here is that basically you start to really, really need self-discipline, a lot of self-discipline. Otherwise, things start to basically crumble because it becomes very, very easy for you to just permanently slack off. That one movie that you decided to watch instead of working turns into 2 movies, turns into 3 movies, then every day you're watching 3 movies and you're no longer getting any work done. If you don't get any work done, it becomes much easier for you to justify to yourself that, oh, well, you weren't feeling great that day, so you're going to give yourself a pass. Because you can, right? And who's going to tell you otherwise? You can see how it quickly becomes a slippery slope if you are not self-disciplined. You have to impose a good structure on yourself, and you have to keep yourself accountable. Now again, of course, this is where having a good team or having basically customers that you have to cater to can help you because you are basically held accountable by your team or by your customers, but still, by way of being your own boss, you have the ultimate power and you have to impose this all on yourself. And also, one thing that I want to add here is that from a mental health point of view, not having any structure can really start to get to you. As an example, for someone like me, where every single day is a work day, but every single day is also a vacation day, you completely lose the definition of a work week and a weekend, and sometimes that starts to mess with your mind. As an example, today, like right now, I'm filming this video on a Sunday, or at night, it's like 2 a.m., so I guess it's Monday morning. Tomorrow's a Monday. For me, tomorrow is going to be identical to today. There's absolutely no difference for me between a Monday and a Sunday. Both days I work, both days I can chill out if I want to. There's no difference between those 2 days. Sometimes that gets to you, and you start to crave that structure of a work week, weekends, normal vacations, and so on and so forth. And now going back to the freedom of decision-making that I mentioned earlier, while I made it sound all nice and dandy, it does have some negatives. And the main negative that it has is that it becomes very stressful. You see, when you work at a normal job for a company, while you might have to deal with the fact that your boss or your boss's boss or your boss's boss's boss is making decisions and you have to just follow them, and that can be annoying, if their decisions happen to be shitty decisions and happen to backfire, you're not going to be the person to blame for that. Your boss's boss's boss is going to be the person to blame for that. If you're a software engineer at Google or Facebook and the product that you built out isn't really liked by users, even though you did what you were supposed to do, you're not going to be the person to blame for that. If the product doesn't generate as much money as the company expected it to, you're not going to be to blame for that. If the product gets totally scrapped, obliterated from existence and thousands of developer hours have been thrown down the drain, you're not going to be to blame for that. However, if you're your own boss, you are going to be to blame for all of the things I mentioned. Why? Because you're the one making the decisions. And not only do you bear the blame for those decisions, if they're shitty decisions, but also these decisions that happen to be shitty are directly affecting your business and therefore you. Because you are your own boss, therefore you are the one paying yourself. So as you can imagine, this freedom of decision making, while it's awesome and gives you a lot of power and a lot of freedom, it's also very stressful. And as our wise, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, or maybe Spider-Man's uncle, once said, with great power comes great responsibility, and when you have the responsibility of decision making, well, you have a big responsibility. That didn't sound as cool as I wanted it to sound, but you get the idea. And for me on AlgoExpert, for the most part, it has still been amazing, and I have felt the pros much more so than the cons. However, there have been a couple times, especially with the freedom of decision making, where I have fantasized of just going back to Google or Facebook and just being a normal SWE, where I just have to do my job, I don't have to make any big decisions, I just put in my work, do what I'm told, and live a much less stressful life. I've certainly had those thoughts a few times. They've been fleeting thoughts, but thoughts nonetheless. On that note, I hope that you found this video interesting, insightful, entertaining, insert adjective of your choice. If you did, don't forget to smash the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, do it now. If you enjoyed this video and you're not subscribed, do it now, press that little red button, and otherwise, follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter if you like short form written content, and I will see you in the next video.